Welcome to Unsigned Hype episode 8. On this episode, I have the pleasure to talk to the incredible artist Prisha Mehta from Dallas, Texas. Prior to her interview, I asked Prisha which song she would play for someone that wasn't familiar with her music yet. She chose her song, Leaving You for Now, and if you're not familiar with Prisha's music yet, here's a snippet of that song before we jump into the interview. This is Unsigned Hype. The song you just heard is called Leaving You for Now by Prisha Mehta, who is joining us from Dallas, Texas today. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show. Prisha, why is Leaving You for Now the song you would play for someone that has never heard your music before?
That's a good question. I think the simple answer is I think it's the best song I've made so far. I think it's the most authentic song I've made so far, instrumentally, lyrically, performance-wise. It's a song I wrote last summer before I went off to college about my experience leaving home, and the lyrics just came out of me very quickly in like the span of 30 minutes, and so did the music. And I think that those are the best types of songs, the songs that just come right out of you. So yeah, I think it's a very authentic song in all of its ways, and it captures me pretty well.
That's interesting because so you mentioned the songs that come out relatively fast, also in terms of writing and putting it together. Those are the songs that you personally consider to be very good. Is other than the approach of how fast you are, what now in this current state gives you the feeling that this is your best song? Because that's how you put it, right? Did you say, I don't remember, did you say best song that you've recorded?
Yeah. I think it is my best song. One, because like I said, I think it's the most authentic. Two, I just really like the lyrics. I think I really particularly like the second verse, the way I wrote that as well. And I really love the production. I think it's just the producer that I worked with. I remember sitting down with him in the first session playing him a song on my acoustic guitar, and then just being like, this is the type of vibe I want. I want it to sound like this. And within like 2 or 3 weeks, we put together a track that was just what I wanted and more. And everything just fits so well together with the lyrics and the production and everything.
So you mentioned authenticity. I'm wondering if this is your most authentic song. What made the songs you put out before that less authentic in your own words?
That's a great question as well. So I guess to give you some background, this song that I just put out, not just, I put it out about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, actually, last December. And I'm currently working on a video for it that's going to be out soon. It was the first song that I put out in like a year when I put it out in December. I hadn't put out a song since like 2021. And all the songs I'd done before Leaving You were songs that I'd written in high school. And I was just very much at that point in my life experimenting with different sounds and musical genres. I didn't really know what kind of sound I wanted in my music, and I think that at times I would sit down with my producer and be like, what kind of, what should I do next? Because I didn't know what I wanted as far as my sound. And sometimes, he would just say, what if you wrote this type of song? And I remember at one point I wrote like a dance type song, like an electronic dance song, which is very different from the kinds of music I would typically write as like a more singer-songwriter with my acoustic guitar kind of thing. So I was just experimenting with a lot of things, and I was writing things that I wouldn't normally write, lyrics that didn't necessarily capture, how I felt.
So
I was trying out different writing styles, and it didn't feel like me until leaving you, I think.
so what do you write about, if you can put that into words, because I understand also sometimes talking about the inspiration for lyrics is not always super easy to put, to understand where they come from. But um, do you have an understanding of what you were writing about before it was truly you? Like where did that come from? The lyrics that you put down.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I was still writing about me with some of those songs. Like I think one song that I put out, "Lose It All," completely written about myself. But then there were a couple other songs that I put out, like "Chosen" and "In the End," where I was just writing about concepts that I didn't necessarily identify with. Like I was writing about, for "Chosen," like falling in love, which I had no experience with at the time. And I was just sort of trying to find lyrics to fit the beat that was created. And I would just listen to the track and think of a concept that would work well with it, and then just write based off that. It didn't feel like I had a personal connection to the lyrics that I was writing, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
with those particular songs. But there were songs like "Lose It All," for instance, is, I think, the song I'm most proud of from that point in my life, from my high school years. It's a song I wrote my freshman year of high school, and that was completely came out of my heart. And again, those are the types of songs that I just enjoy listening to most, because I know that they came from a real place.
Yeah, you were mentioning that. So I think your first releases are dating back to like 2019, and you've put out 3 songs in between, or ever since, I guess, right? So is that correct?
So
So Lose It All.
my first ever song actually came out in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no longer on Spotify, but it's on YouTube. And there's a music video up for it still as well. It was called "Gloves No Makeup." I wrote it like in 8th grade, and I think it came out the summer before my freshman year of high school.
Can you just, because that's interesting. I would like to understand what drives you to write that first song at a relatively young age, and then really like putting it, turning it into a song, turning lyrics into a song in high school. Do you remember that moment when you decided to put something down on paper and start singing it?
Yeah. Well, that moment came, I think, a lot earlier than when "Gloves No Makeup" came out. I think that moment happened when I was like in 7th or 6th grade.
And how
I had
old are you
started
then?
I was like 11, 12 when I first thought, hey, I should start writing songs. This sounds fun. Um, yeah. And I think the catalyst for that was I was taking music lessons. I was learning how to sing, and I was taking like stage performance lessons as well. And I was around a lot of musicians all the time for the program that I was in at the time. And I was singing cover songs mostly, but then at some point, I was just like, I've always sort of had that creative instinct to make something. And I found that in my performances where I was singing cover songs, I wasn't feeling as creative as I could if I tried to make something of my own. So I remember I like Googled or something. I did some research on like how to start songwriting, and I think Taylor Swift was the first sort of connection I found to that. And I was looking into how she started writing songs, and then I became like an extreme Swiftie at that point in my life. And was following her a lot, and how she started writing songs, following her songwriting process. And I started to teach myself acoustic guitar at the time. I had taken piano lessons, but I didn't know how to play guitar. So I just picked up a guitar, started to learn, watching YouTube videos, and I just sort of started to spew out sounds and words and see if I could make something with it. Back in 6th or 7th grade, I would say.
Is that, well, you mentioned the difficulty in finding your own sound and really understanding how you want to put together a song that is you and that represents you. Is that what led to you being maybe a bit more hesitant with putting out music in the last couple of years?
Definitely. I think because there's two sides, I think that I think about anytime that I'm writing a song or thinking about producing a song. I have, I would say, like dozens of songs written that I haven't released and don't plan on releasing, but they may be super authentic, and a lot of them have come out of my heart, but that isn't the only thing I have to think about as an artist. I have to think about, is this going to get listeners? Is this going to be a worthy investment? Because producing songs takes a lot of money. So there's times where I write a song that's really, really feels authentic to me, but I'm like, I feel like I could create a more marketable product.
And you base this,
what pulls me back.
And this is interesting. So you base this first on lyrics only. It's not like you try to play around with instruments and trying to putting together a song and then deciding whether or not you put it out. You really base it on what you've written down and then deciding whether or not it will make a good song for your audience.
So I decide like based off of the lyrics and the melody and the composition and everything. Usually when I'm writing, everything comes out together. I don't usually write the lyrics first and then the music. I usually just pick up my guitar or sit down on the piano and write out everything together. But yeah, it is weird because you might one day you write a song that feels super authentic and you feel amazing about it, and then the next day you begin to doubt, is this actually, is this a worthy investment? Is this going to get listeners? And it's a constant sort of tug of war between like, I want to put out this music that feels real, and I need to put out music that's commercially viable, and I think there have been moments where those have intersected, like with the last song I put out, Leaving You. I felt like I could combine the two, but yeah, it's complicated, I think.
But can you ever be sure? Can you ever be sure what works with your listeners and what doesn't work? And also, how do you, if you go against the decision of putting a song out based on, is it marketable? What do you base the decision on?
That's a great question. To your first question, I don't think you can ever know. And that's why I think you have to take the risk sometimes and just put out a song and see what happens. But also there are limitations to that because just putting out a song requires a lot of money. And to your second question, I also think you never know for sure. I think it's just more of like, you play around with it, you write a song, you come back to it the next day, and you think, hey, do I feel great about this? One, does it pass that check mark? Two, is this something that, is this something that you think that could be worth the investment you're going to put into it, right? I think that's always the biggest thing. Because producing a song costs a lot of money if you don't produce your own music. I write all my own music, compose it, but I'm not a technical gal as of yet. I plan to learn how to produce to make my life easier, but right now I just write and compose. So it's always a bit of a bit of a barrier for me in terms of should I produce this.
Can you let me into that process of, because you're also alluding to the fact that it needs to be mixed and mastered by someone by engineers.
Yes.
And can you, what does that mean financially for you in terms of you've written the song, you've composed it, and what are the next steps that you would usually need to take? And if you can maybe let me into also a bit of the financial side of things, that'd be awesome.
Yes, for sure. So I write a song on my guitar or my piano, and then if I, feel proud of it and I really, really love it, and the next day I still really, really love it, I record a demo of it, me playing on my acoustic guitar on voice memos, and I send it to my producer, and just via text message, and I'm like, hey, here's this idea I have. I'd love to go through with producing it. Now, I only ever get to this stage if I, feel confident in the song and I know that it's worth the money that it's going to cost. Because the money it can be pretty expensive, like a few $1,000s just to, get a couple hours of studio time and have one fully produced track.
So it is a few $1,000s for one track.
Yes. And that is, I mean, you could, there are plenty of producers out there, right? There are really, really experienced producers who make, great music. And then there are newer producers who also make great music. And there's a cost range, but generally I know that the way I am, I would love to create like the best quality content possible without getting, extremely out of my budget range. If I know if I'm going to post something on Spotify or Apple Music, it's going to have to be, it's going to have to be great. And that's just the standard that I hold myself to, and the standard that I think you honestly have to hold yourself to if you want to have, successful music out there. If you want your songs to be played on the radio, they have to sound clear. They have to sound well mixed and well produced. Otherwise, radio stations and other media outlets are just not going to accept them. They're not going to listen to them. So
yeah, I think it
does end up being quite expensive.
Yeah, no, and it's the right approach for sure. Always put in as much quality, or get out as much quality as you can. And I think it makes, I mean, maybe as a segue to my next question, maybe it's the high quality and also the great music that you put out at a fairly young age, I would say. I don't, I think that you're early 20s, or from what I remember reading somewhere, or
currently 18.
So fairly young age, to put up music that sounds so mature and so professional is pretty insane. And what I also thought was insane, I don't know if you've probably looked into your stats on Spotify, but your music is played in Europe as well. Like I saw cities like Paris and Vienna, Milan. I thought I was curious to hear if you have any explanation on how your music travels to these places, from Dallas to Milan.
Yeah. That's a great question. It's only recently, in the last 3 months, and I think I will give credit where credit is due. So let me explain. Before, I would say May of this month, my streams were super low. Marketing has always been the biggest challenge for me. One, because I'm in school and I'm not constantly putting out content like a lot of artists are on TikTok, and props to them. I aspire to be like them and to be able to balance both sides of my life. But my marketing was just, I was not getting a whole lot of streams on any of my songs, including my latest song, Leaving You. I'd made a few TikToks myself trying to gain some TikTok traction, but I think my account itself was just, I think TikTok just didn't like my account for a very long time. So I wasn't getting much traction on my videos as well, like the few videos that I'd put out since Leaving You came out. And then I put my music on this new app called Mellow. I'm plugging Mellow right now. It's this app that someone I knew created to promote underground artists, and the app
I think I've heard
it's
of,
fairly new, but it's
I think I've heard of, I've seen that somewhere. It's like where artists can upload some songs and like more underground artists as well, something like that, right?
yeah. It's a fairly new app. I decided to just upload my music on there, and I did. And the creator of the app, I guess he started this TikTok series where he pulls some artists that from that app that he likes, and basically he highlights them. And the series is really funny because I think it's also very true. And it represents me pretty well. The series is called Artists with Fire Music, which I thought was really nice and kind, but like crappy marketing. So that was the series. And he made a video about my song where he basically called my marketing extreme crap, which was true. And he basically thought my music was great, and that was basically the whole concept of the video. And that video got like several tens of thousands of views. I don't know where it's at right now. Last time I checked it, it did pretty well and got, it didn't like extremely blow up, but it got several thousand likes as well. And I basically had like an exponential increase in my my listeners across all streaming platforms, especially Spotify.
That's amazing. Great idea.
I had, it was great. It was just sort of a lucky thing that happened. But I gained a lot of listeners from that and was able to connect with a lot of new people. And since then, I've been sort of trying to keep up that traction, trying to submit my music to, as many playlists and blogs and websites and media outlets as possible. And I've been getting some good news from some places, some bad news from some other places. And
so what are good news and bad news? Does that mean, hey, so you reach out to them, you send an email, you write the email, you say, hey, I'm Prisha, I have this song, could you post it on your blog? And then they get back to you and say yes or no? Is that kind of how it goes?
That is exactly how it goes. I find the email of the radio station or the playlist on Spotify, the Spotify curator, and I go, hey, I'd love for you to share my song. I can give you my website, my bio, all the music I've put out, my Spotify profile, my social media, my Bandcamp, anything you need, I will have it for you. And I send that email. Sometimes I DM people on Instagram, and I just do as many of those as possible, and I see where that takes me.
And is there a way for you to describe or to explain when people say no? Do they give you any reasoning, or do they just say doesn't fit? Why do people not want to support you, in your own words?
They do give reasons, and I think sometimes people give good reasons too. Usually for Spotify playlists, it's like, hey, sorry, like we loved your song, but it doesn't fit with the vibe and the mood of this playlist, unfortunately, and we wish you the best of luck or something like that. That's usually how it goes for playlists. Or sometimes, occasionally for playlists, they'll be like, hey, we thought that your writing was great, but we think your vocals could use a little work, or we thought that the production was, we thought the mixing was a bit unbalanced or something like that. They'll say something that they didn't like about the song, like an actual aspect of the song they didn't like, which I think is good to hear as well. Personally, I want that's like if I'm getting feedback, that's actually great for me. But those are, I think, the best kinds of rejections you can get where they actually reply to you.
Yeah.
And then there are other rejections where they don't ever get back to you, which is basically a soft rejection. And I am like, I think you have to reach out to basically a lot of people is the general idea that I've gotten over the past few months.
I think it was what you mentioned with the feedback that you get on your songs. Is that, do you think that that's actionable feedback? Is that something that you take to heart and that you try to consider when putting together new tracks?
I think all feedback is valid. I'm a very open-minded person. I want to hear what you think about my song. I don't want you to sugarcoat anything. But I also know that everything that people say about my song doesn't necessarily have to change the way that I do make music and do things. I can receive feedback gracefully and then decide whether or not I want to implement it based on what feels true to myself. I think for me, again, authenticity is number one. Is this feedback going to change my process that makes my music my music? Is this feedback and then I think the other thing is this feedback coming from like a legitimate source, does this person, I think you have to think about credibility as well. Like, does this person, um, if they're commenting on the mixing, like where does that feedback sort of come from? But yeah, generally I receive all feedback gracefully, and then sometimes I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really good point. Like, I do think my vocals and the mixing on my vocals could have been a little bit better. Like, I think the volume could have been a bit higher here. And then there are other times where I'm like, I see where you're coming from, but I think that's actually what I was going for. Like, I wanted the mixing to sound like this. So,
because you were just mentioning, reaching out to blogs and reaching out to Spotify and getting on playlists. If we did a little exercise of manifestation right now in this second, what do you think right now is the thing that would help you out in your current situation as an artist the most? Is it some big artist like Taylor Swift reposting your story, or is it you getting included in the Spotify playlist? What do you believe right now at the second would really change your trajectory in your career?
I personally think that what would that kind of thing wouldn't necessarily be like a retweet from Taylor Swift or like a successful blog post or anything. Right now, I think what I'm looking for is a really, really good idea and a song that I'm proud of. I think that's what I'm most struggling with, to be honest. I think I'm in sort of a space where one, I haven't been writing as much, which is on me because I'm just juggling a lot of things and not prioritizing writing. And I think the other thing is when I do write, I'm oftentimes coming back to songs and thinking, I don't know if I'm a huge fan, So I think creative and artistic satisfaction is probably what I'm most looking for right now.
That's a great answer. And that's also bringing me to you mentioning juggling so many things. And you mentioned that you went off to college last year, I think. You graduated high school last year. That meant, when we graduate high school, it's like the world is like oyster. We can do whatever we want. You want to obviously work on a successful career as a musician, but you're also choosing to go to university. How do you juggle these things? Like, how do you make a decision on whether or not you should just go all in with the music and not go to college, versus having kind of a safe route with doing music on the side?
Yeah, you see, Miles, I don't think I will, ever have a great complete answer for that. But I think I just sort of I know that I want to do well in school and continue to do school. I think my education is very important to me, not only because it I think stability is one thing, but the other thing is I enjoy learning, and I enjoy being intellectually stimulated, and I think that a university education gives that to me. So that's one thing, and that's important to me. So I know that that's something that I don't want to push out from my life. But at the same time, I know that artistic stimulation is also important for me, and um, I know that I see some potential in myself artistically, and I want to continue to grow that while I simultaneously, go to school and pursue my degree. Who knows if something really great happens on the artistic side, I could, you know, consider putting school on the back burner for a little bit. But for now, I think it's just going to be a matter of trying to figure out how to juggle both, um, and going at both, which is with as much, dedication and passion as possible, is kind of the approach I have right now.
Do you still do a lot of covers of artists? Is that a, because I know that you've done covers of Harry Styles songs, Olivia Rodrigo, I think, and you sing songs in the cabin in Tennessee, trying to engage your community that you have. How valuable are these ways of promoting yourself as an artist, in your opinion?
Yeah, I still do cover songs. I just put out a cover actually of Olivia Rodrigo's latest song. Just recorded a live cover like in my bedroom a couple days ago and put that out. I I don't do it like every week, but I still put them out whenever I get a chance, and I think TikTok has made it a lot easier to put out shorter covers. So I do that occasionally as well. Um, I think that they're a great way of connecting with people who don't already know who you are, because it's easier to connect with someone who shares something with you. Um, and if they see you singing a song that they like, then they might consider looking into you. They might consider following you and exploring your music. So I definitely think that cover songs are a great way to connect with people. Um, but I also think that original music is also a great way to connect with people. Just putting out unreleased snippets of unreleased songs on TikTok can sometimes be exciting for people to listen to. So yeah, I think they're both valuable.
Yeah, and I like the performative aspect of it. It's not like you're not just putting out a song, but you're really putting yourself and your face and your being in front of a camera to show how you perform something, um,
Mm-hmm.
which you've also had some some experience with, right? I mean, you've played in House of Blues in Dallas, I think. Is that
Yeah.
correct? And you've performed at like
Yes.
songwriter festivals. How did do these things? Would you recommend other artists that are starting off to get involved in these kinds of things and playing shows and participating in songwriter festivals? And how did that advance yourself in your career?
Yeah, 100% would recommend. I think before you even start with recording music or producing music, I think you need to be comfortable singing and performing music live to some degree. And you're never going to be completely 100% comfortable if you're just starting out. Like even I'm not like, you know, entirely comfortable performing live. I still struggle to um put together like set lists of music that I feel super comfortable performing with. But yes, live performance, I think, is the first step you need to take as an artist. Put yourself out there, actually, physically, and see. see how you like that. See if it's fun. Because if it's not fun, then maybe it's not right for you, you know? So it definitely helped me in a lot of ways. I think personally it helped a lot with my confidence in myself, my confidence in my music, and in my voice and things. When you have an audience listening to you and they like what you hear, that definitely makes you feel great, and it makes yourself feel great when you can see that other people are enjoying it. So personally, it definitely helped a lot. And then I think music wise, I've been able to network with so many cool musicians. Like I performed at a songwriters festival in Alabama, like 2 years ago, I think. And I did a little songwriters round robin where there were 3 songwriters on the stage, and we each would sing a song of our own and then sort of alternate and then talk about our songs with each other. And there was an audience listening. So it was cool. And those experiences have allowed me to connect with other musicians who are also so passionate about what they do. And I've also learned so much about what being a good musician means, just connecting with these other awesome, talented people. So there's so many benefits to doing live performances, songwriters festivals, anything really.
You mentioned so many other talented people that you've met through these opportunities, and I'm wondering who are artists that might be in a situation also where they're just starting off their career that you know of that you believe are very talented that you would want to recommend on the show. Do you have some people in mind that you want to shout out?
Yeah. Let me think. I think that I'm remembering their faces, but I'm struggling to find their names. I think one great artist who I met back in middle school, who's doing awesome things now. She's absolutely incredible. She makes I think she sings in Spanish mostly, but she does have, I think, a couple English songs out there as well. If I'm not wrong, I could be wrong. Her name is Kate Crystal. I think she's great. Super talented. She's also sort of starting out her career, but she has a pretty good following, and she's awesome. She was always a great person to be around, and very talented vocalist, very very kind person, very fun to be around. I would definitely recommend her if you're ever able to reach out to her.
Cool. You've mentioned a couple of things already, talking about your struggle of really finding your creativity and keep writing and finding the time to write. And I was wondering, with that, are there other challenges that you face and that you're facing that are difficult for you starting your career as a musician and really getting it to the next level, other than the creative block that you have sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's one thing, which is mainly because when you're in school and you are not actively making time to be creative, that means that you have creative blocks more often because you're not doing it as much. Like, because honestly, I think that it's kind of like working a muscle, songwriting. You have to do it. You have to do it regularly. And the more you do it, the better you become at coming up with good ideas that you feel proud of. So that's definitely a struggle. Another thing is getting people to listen to your music, just successful marketing, which I've already mentioned. In the past few months, I've had like some moderate success with that. I think the most success I've probably had organically since I started making music, which is great. But it's still an ongoing challenge to keep that traction going and to make sure that people are still listening to music, and to make sure that I'm still putting out enough content for people to keep listening to my music. So, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the word great, or the word marketing again, and I did want to mention that I thought it was a great marketing move of yours to put your phone number into your Spotify profile. And I'm wondering if someone's ever reached out to you through there, or like.
Oh yes. I actually will say that I was inspired by another artist to put my phone number in my Spotify bio. Actually, a fellow musician that I go to school with at UT Austin. I just saw that she made music and she was in my class, and I was like, wow, that's very cool. Saw her profile and saw that she had her phone number in there, and I was like, that's pretty cute. I would love to try that. So I put my phone number in there, and yes, I've gotten about, not a whole lot, but I'd say about a dozen to 20-ish maybe messages, texts from people. And they're always the best thing. They're my most favorite thing to see on my phone. I would like if I could get those texts all the time, that would be incredible because they're so sweet and they're so kind always. Usually it'll just be, something like, we love your music or something like that, but very, very simple, short messages of encouragement that, make me happy that people are liking what I put out. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I really like that you did that. That's really cool. Really good idea. Is there something you wish you would have known about starting a career in music prior to doing so?
Ooh. Tough question. I think there would be two things. One is that it can cost a lot of money to make things that you're proud of. Yeah, that's that. And then the other thing is it also takes a lot of time and energy. When I started my music career, I guess, I was 11 years old and I was in school and I was doing it on the side, which I guess I still am right now in college. But, I was doing it on the side, doing my classwork, coming home from school, and then picking up my music stuff. And I realized, I think, within a couple years that I started making music, that you have to put as much time as you're putting into, your schoolwork and all of that as into music as well. It's not something you can just do on the side, even if you are doing it on the side.
So that's already great advice also, because I have two final questions for you. And even though you're at the very early start of your career, and it's funny because I hope this is not, because I know like comparisons with other artists are always a bit weird, and you have your own lane and your own style, and but you mentioned Taylor Swift earlier, and I just thought it was really interesting. Because I sent a text to a friend of mine earlier, and I was like, yeah, I have another interview tonight with Prisha. And for some reason, she gives me the feeling that when Taylor Swift is going to die down, she's going to be the next Taylor Swift, filling out like arenas and stuff like that. And I don't know, when I heard your song, I immediately knew that that's pure talent right there, and that you have your own lane basically. So for you being at such an early stage in your career, and that's what I wanted to get at initially with what I said, is crazy, because you'll get very big, and I hope that in 10 years you'll listen to this podcast again and you're like, oh yeah, I've just filled out like a massive arena, and that was yeah, I can definitely see that.
Thank you. That means a lot.
But that brings me to my question, like, what, even at the early stage of your career right now, what is the advice that you could already give someone who's like starting off fresh? Like, what are 2 or 3 things to keep in mind when starting a music career?
So I would say, for me, I'm coming from a place. I'm coming from this is coming from someone who doesn't do music full time and is doing music while simultaneously being a student. And I think that if you are in that place, I would say just be constantly learning from other artists, from your musical peers, because you're going to see people doing things better than you all the time. And that's just people who are marketing better than you, people who maybe have better quality producers or something, so be constantly learning and figuring out how people are doing things, and experiment with different sounds, experiment with different styles. It's okay to not know who you are as an artist. I think that these days on social media and online, it's so easy to see like super talented young people who know exactly what kind of young, music they want to put out, and know exactly the kind of sound they want to put out. And they're doing it, but that's, even they in actuality are still figuring themselves out too. So don't think that you need to have everything figured out as far as who you are as an artist. Just be constantly learning, I think, would be one thing. And then I think the other is make sure that music is fun for you. Whenever it's easy as a professional artist, like when you're starting to become professional, to turn your music career into like a job. And I guess it is a job for a lot of people, but make sure it's fun, make sure it's not draining you. Make sure that music is giving you joy, and do what it takes to get joy out of music. If you're doing something that is not making you happy with your music, don't do it. Don't sacrifice your joy just for like listeners, because that can be very crushing. And I think that has long-term consequences if you make a career move that isn't authentic and true to yourself. So just do stuff that makes you happy, I think, is a really big thing.
And is that what you do it all for? What, as a final question, do you ever take the time to think about the juggling, the stress, the financial pressure? Like what is it that you do this all for?
That's a great question. I think I do it all because I just love the idea of creating good music. Like, I love the idea of creating something that just makes you stop and makes your jaw drop, or something that makes you cry and like really, really feel something on a level that you've never felt before. That is what I aspire to do with all my music. Like, I do it because I hope that, with all of the music that I'm making, that I can create something that, makes someone feel something like insane, something that they've never experienced before, some emotion that they've never felt before. I think that's what I do it all for. I do it for the possibility of making something like amazing.
Prisha, thank you so much for this really amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I've never recorded a very sort of authentic, vulnerable podcast like this, so this was great. Thank you. I can't promise you won't get there easily, but I know that it's worth the time. It's where I need to be. I can't promise you won't make it easily, but
This was Unsigned Hype episode 8 with Prisha Mehta. The track you're hearing right now is called Plans. You will find the song in the Unsigned Hype podcast playlist along with all other songs discussed in this episode. Make sure to support Prisha by checking out her music and following her on social media. And for your weekly Unsigned Hype, make sure to also follow us on Spotify and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes below.